And I'm going to talk about this week's internet weather, starting with the top 10 most probed ports by volume. Nothing much changes compared to last week's. As you can see from this here, one key difference which is popping out is 9000 TCP. I'll talk a little bit about that. If you go about 23 TCP, which is Telnet, 445 is SMB, 443 HTTPS. They kind of stayed at the same levels and not much deviations in there. The key differential here is 9000 actually at the 6th position in the rank actually jumped to 33 positions to 39 actually. It was at 39 last week and jumped 33 positions to 6.
It looked like it had jumped up, and so it looks like there's some scanning that's going on there. It's not quite clear exactly what this scanning may be. We might find out, from doing a little bit of analysis. But from right now, it looks like it's certainly some heavy scanning.
This is actually 120 days of graphs showing how much scan volume of on this port happening on our common backbone. As you can see, this kind of activity started in a day or two. I think it started late Sunday, and it kind of ramped up, kind of staying at these levels at this point. Typically, there were about 25 million flow counts per hour. I think it's kind of ramped up at this point. This is compared to the same volume with the number of scan sources. I mean, in the sense how many Unix sources are involved, acting on this port, probing on this specific port. As you can see, we are also seeing at the same number actually, I think about 1,000 to 1,100 IPs per hour to, I think it kind of jumped up to today about, I think 5,000 odd source IPs seen on this specific port. There's a geographical distribution of this one. Well, one of the reports which I grabbed, I think at the point it has about 3,500 source IPs. And the geographical distribution of this one, as we can see, it's mostly scattered around some part of South America, some North American region, and Asia Pac regions. This is how the heat map of this one. Coming back to 9000, it's one of the HTTP ports used by most of the devices. For example, it says it's used for CS listener, but it's typically used for 9000 TCP. At this point, we do not have much details what's really caused into it. We're looking into it. I think most likely it's some sort of new botnet. It's trying to looking for some vulnerable devices on it. Right. The reason I see it, the way we were looking at it, most of the sources seems to be some sort of scanners. They're performing aggressive scanning, not only on this port, but they're also doing on other ports. But seems like there seems to be maybe something new exploit or some sort of new botnet activities coming up, and the kind of looking at this, basically initial reconnaissance on this port.
Okay.
And moving on, this is the graph about the most sources probing. There are not much difference again in this case compared to previous weeks, like your usual suspects, like 445, 23, 8080, 22. But the two things I want to point it out is 5431 at rank number 7 and the last one 8291. I'll explain a little bit why I want to talk about only those two ports. This is actually past 90 days of graphical view on port 8291. 8291 typically it's associated with MikroTik routers, and this is used by one of the botnet, Hajime botnet, that specifically uses this port for C2 activity. Actually, this botnet is not new. I think we kind of talked about sometime last year, I think early April or May of last year, there was actually this botnet came into picture. At that time, I'm just showing the comparison to what the activity compared to today to at that point of time. As you can see, this is actually our usual traffic happening. At that time, you can see actually there's a huge jump, and there are about, I think 130, 140,000 scan sources were seen at that time. Slowly it kind of tapered off. Actually, if you see, now we are around, I think about 3,000, 30,000 sources per hour. There was a little bit actually on this thread track, I think a couple of weeks ago, Stan or someone else actually talked about some continued activity going on. But if we comparatively, if you look at the time of actually this botnet surfaced, we can see the difference. Actually, it came up, but I think for some reason there still actually seems to be lots of MikroTik devices. As we know, it's not easy to patch or update these devices.
Yep.
And moving on, actually there's some information about related to this port 8291. This actually, as I said, it's MikroTik and used by HGMA botnet. And there's some actual exploit code pointing out to use of this port 8291 in this coding example. And moving on to the other one, there's not much activity, but still I want to show some sort of a correlation between this port and 8291 TCP. It's pretty light. I think there's some ups and downs, but nothing major differences as we've seen with the 8291. The thing I want to see is basically it's used by Broadcom UPnP. It's called BCMP botnet. That's what it used actually. This is also an old one. I think it came out last November. It's used by basically looking for botnets which are using for like devices like a router, similar kind of devices. And there's some similarities. If you see in the code, actually, we see TCP 5431 SYN. Similar pattern is used by the previous botnet also, HGMA also. If I go back, as you can see in the exploit code, there's TCP 8291, then a SYN hack came back, and then some sort of conversation gone through. I think seems like, I mean, we know there's lots of code sharing between the bot headers. Probably they're using some sort of, because I'm not surprised because it's also an IoT device and also router-based botnet.
Right.
So there's some sort of similarity in that thing. I just want to show that similarity, you know, even though there's not much difference, but there's definitely some sort of relation between the use of the exploit code.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like you said, code sharing is very common.
Very common.
I think some of the predictions that Ganesh made about it potentially being the signs of a new bot could be, or it could be, you know, security researchers that are researching a potential new vulnerability in some device.